Conesti, how are ye? Welcome to the Candlelittales podcast and the pre-show chat of our Mythic Places that we're starting a new series on. I'm sitting down in the office. My name is Aron and I'm sitting with my sister.
And my name is Sorcha, and it has been a while.
Since I've been in the office. It has been a while.
You were replaced by a wooden bull for quite a long time.
Yeah, that was a prop from a show in November that we forgot about altogether.
Do you know who didn't forget about it?
Well, I did. I forgot about it.
Don't leave it in my office, Aron. I won't be able to use my office, Aron.
You should have told me about it for many months.
I just stopped using my office, to be honest.
Yeah, I did notice that actually.
In fairness, the internet reception out here is also like catastrophically bad, so I can't actually be on calls here, even though I have a nicer backdrop. I realise that.
Yeah, your backdrop and your...
It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's fine. It's the back of my couch and the bottom of two paintings.
We should probably stop talking about backdrops since we're not actually recording video.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway...
Were we meant to have a GoPro?
We probably had plans to have it. Anyway, look, we're prepping because we have a pre-show chat, a pre-series chat to talk about, to get our heads into travelling around the country a little bit, because we've been requested a few times, and this is a bit of a call out or a call to action, because we're really curious to hear from you guys, anyone who has specific stories from locations or areas that you know about that you would like us to talk about, or you would specifically want to hear us tell. That would be great to hear from you, because we're constantly looking for stories. We're always regurgitating, reusing, recreating and reimagining stories that we've either done before or are finding new ones or coming to, because we still have a long list to get through. But right now we've wanted to do this for a while, is a bit of a tour around Ireland to some of the mythical places and tell their stories. So this is what this series will be about. Sorcha, what places will the next 3 episodes?
Well, the next 4 episodes, actually, we decided we would kind of look at, like, start off with some of just the sort of the greatest hits, like the places that people know about in Ireland, the places that people visit in Ireland,
the tourist attractions.
Places come to.
The tourist attractions.
You're spiking that audio a small bit now.
Sorry.
Watch your vocals.
Yeah. So, that's what happens when you start shouting tourist attractions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I suppose it is also it's a nice one because we're very close to Blarney. We grew up in Cork, very close to the Blarney Stone, and went there many times. And
we've been a few times. We've both.
Well, last year I was there like constantly because I was during the whole lockdown situation, and I was locked down in Cork and kept on going over to Blarney for big long walks because the park and area is beautiful, the landscape, the forest around it is gorgeous, and just the old.
And did they let people in?
Yeah, I mean, it's all paid. You have to pay through a fence, which I have a certain...
well, Mur always gave out about that because there wasn't like a local discount. Like,
yeah.
Which is kind of, I get where she's coming from on that. But at the same time, people have to make a living.
We did blag our way into a number of ways of getting the discount because my dad had one kind of pass that he got from somebody who gave it to him for a while, something, and then we got a kind of a pass. So anyway, we fandangled a way to get in. Usually when I was a teenager, if I was ever going to the place, I was going in by the river because there was a way you could just kind of not even hop a fence. There was no fence. It was just there's a little river and there's a little bridge and there's a few trees that it looks a bit dangerous. You know, it looks like you'll fall.
And it looks like you'll fall into the river, but honestly, when you're 14,
just a skip and a jump.
There's no, even if you were going to fall into the river, you'd probably fucking bounce.
Yeah, exactly. It's grand. So we bounced along there a few times and kind of got in. And it was very exciting to be in there. But like, it is beautiful because there's a really old what's it called? Burial
circle?
No,
burial?
the burial
cemetery?
Burial stone. Burial stone. The standing stones.
Standing
stones.
Okay, we got there.
We got there, guys. We got there. Brain is a little bit foggy.
Listen, we're both a little bit fucking brain dead. It's fine. It's fine.
But there is a really old standing stone there, like massive, huge stone from Megalithic period, and then around the area.
What period?
I'm not going to say it again. I'm not going to say it again.
The megalithic.
Megalithic. I said megalithic. I said megalithic. All right. So you're spiking. when you mock me. Stop spiking. But walking into Blarney, okay, so you see the castle, you see the landscape, you see the forestry. There's lots of places to walk, and also, there's a few stories connected to it. I have previously gone down rabbit holes of looking up, where the McCarthys found a little intersection.
Yeah, their own personal banshee.
Their own personal banshee.
Who was kind of a helpful banshee who did more than foretell death and actually gave them a little bit of a dig out one time when they were preparing for a court case, which I'll get into this time actually, and see if, we can dig up some other lore about Blarney and its environs.
And again, the word Blarney itself is to be shy talking. Basically.
Absolutely.
So I just love the fact that there's a place in Ireland called basically shy talk.
Well, I feel like it was probably called Blarney already, and then Queen Victoria or whatever queen it was. I think it was Queen Victoria, but that also might be because I only know one queen. Really.
There's Elizabeth as well.
There is also Elizabeth. Was it Elizabeth or Victoria?
I think it was Elizabeth. That's
do you know what? Victoria's too recent. Victoria's too recent. It couldn't have been Vicky.
It was Elizabeth 1, 2, or 3.
I don't think. I think the current Elizabeth is maybe
the third. I don't know. I don't pay attention to these things.
In which we display our
phenomenally
deliberately cultivated ignorance about the royal family. Anytime anybody tells me anything about the British royal family, I go into my brain and I delete it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you end up just accumulating a load of knowledge that annoys me to have.
Yeah, it's not.
I feel like it's colonising my brain, and I'm like, no.
There's been enough colonisation, I'll tell you that much.
Get out of here, all of you. None of you are allowed, all of you
anymore.
People.
Yeah.
Out.
So we'll be looking at again, like Blarney itself is such a beautiful place to be in, and it's such a massive. It used to be. It was quiet for 2 years. Obviously, people are coming back to Ireland, so this is the idea now to kind of like give a little bit of background to the places that people will be going to, so they might be able to listen to a little bit of local lore about and legends about the areas that are interesting. So Blarney is, obviously brilliant.
The thing is as well, when you get to these places, there's a lot of the visitor centre stuff has like archaeological information, historical information. Mm-hmm. They've got that very well covered. And I'm happy for them because I'm bad at it because I don't remember as
we're displaying brilliantly.
We're displaying brilliantly by not knowing which queen is which.
Not a bit.
We are not great on the whole history thing, but also
this is why it's not a history podcast.
There are great Irish history podcasts,
there are.
And one of them is literally called the Irish History Podcast, and one of them is Shite Talk Irish History. We had those lads on; they're great. Well. But yeah, we're not historians. We're bad at it. We are kind of like interested in some of the stories behind it and some of the lore behind it and some of the folk tales behind it. Because also, like, the interesting thing is that sometimes the folk memory can persist little nuggets of information that are much, much, much later than verified and confirmed by the archaeologists, as is something that happened with Newgrange, which is one of the other locations that we're going to be spending a bit of time on over the next few weeks, where there were like ancient folk tales in the area about how some of the stones were brought by the Tuatha Dé Danann from the Mourne Mountains. And then when they actually excavated it in the 1960s, it was like, there were stones there that actually came from the Mourne Mountains.
Mourne Mountains and the Wicklow Mountains, I think, are the two places that they came from.
There was another, but I can't remember where it was. But yeah, there were like, those kinds of ideas of folk memory persisting. And there were stories of giants being burned in cups inside the mound, and they found there were cremation, basins in there that had some cremated remains in them. So there's kind of like cool little bits where it's like the folk memory persists for literally, in that case, millennia, thousands of years. Newgrange was built, and about 100 years later it was sealed up, and 4,000 years later it was dug up. And all that time people were telling that story about the Tuatha Dé Danann bringing the rocks from the Mourne Mountains.
Yeah,
and it turned out that they were fucking right.
And there's something about like places with a lot of, you can call it spiritual power, you can call it like resonance from just events happening, occurrences, people gathering and ritually practicing things there that have basically a lasting effect on the place, because you can feel it when you walk into it, and those stories that are built up around as a result of, or potentially before, that led to people there, that type of thing. Chicken and egg on what came first, obviously, but the stories are what last. And going back to Blarney, people still queue up to kiss the stone. No, but like just on the last point of like, that's why people kiss the stone, is to get the gift of the gab. And why you get the gift of the gab,
but like that's the Blarney thing, is like, that is a historical story.
Sure.
Like, it is, it's linked to Cliona, who is one of the old goddesses who is much older. I think the kind of fascinating thing about the folk memory stuff is when it way predates anything that's written down.
Yeah.
Like, 400 years versus 4,000 years is just like an order of magnitude. For actual kind of factual information to be passed down, I think is really interesting. As like,
No, and again, Newgrange, and that's that area. If you go in there again, lovely, beautiful visitor centre. They've all the
they've all the history. There. They've all the dioramas of the Neolithic people and the megalithic people.
Absolutely, and you kind of walk up there and you actually seeing it, sensing it, walking around, sitting next to the stones that have been carved thousands of years. Like seeing just still the same things you see in your own mind's eye when you close your eyes, or you're visualizing and you're kind of doodling on your pen, and you just doodles, little scrawls, little squirrels.
A few of them mushrooms.
A few of them mushrooms, maybe, yeah.
A little bit of mushroom tea.
Yeah, a bit of mushroom tea there.
A little bit of mushroom tea there now, a little bit of spirals into your peripheral vision there.
Exactly,
just kind of
you wouldn't know.
Showing you the shape of the universe.
Absolutely.
Making you think about all those people years ago seeing the same thing.
Yeah, but it is, like, it's linked. So we're so linked throughout time, and to go to a place like that, which resonates with something really strong. And we can't have an idea of exactly what it looked like, because obviously they restored it and they made a bit of a guess, and they put this beautiful white facade on the front of it as what they thought it might have been looked like. But of course, it was just a hill for so long that looked like a strange looking hill.
Which is the interesting thing about that whole necropolis, which is that whole area of like Brú-na-Bóinne, because Newgrange is the most kind of like well restored, well excavated, well known, because it has that winter solstice, the sun hits the back inside the tomb. But like, there's so many mounds, as well as the three main ones of Newgrange and Nowth and Dowth. There's also hundreds. And during the drought a few years back, they found out that there were dozens and dozens and dozens more than anybody had any idea of, because people flying over with drones. This was kind of a news story a couple of years back in Ireland. And I can't remember, I think it was in 2020. I think I remember reading it during the lockdown. But then I was never very good with time.
Time is difficult.
The last 2 or 3 years have made that much, much worse. So I can't remember actually what summer that was. That it was a hot, dry summer, and these remains became visible from aerial photographs. And because people were actually flying drones and had drones that they could take aerial photographs with, suddenly way more of them were discovered to be there.
And obviously, like, it's a place of, it's a place of real beauty. It's a place of real kind of some form of spiritual power. You go there, you can kind of feel it, and it definitely resonates in the land around it. And it's kept cleared, and Newgrange was excavated. Dowth isn't, and the farmer who owns that, or the landowner who owns that, it won't let that be excavated because it feels a bit creepier. There's a life and death kind of story relating to
There's a bit of a life and death thing going on there.
Nowth and Dowth. And it's, again, you can walk around it, you can spend time there, and it's interesting just to sit in those places and feel the resonance with the power of ancient. It goes back for so long ago. People were coming here ritually for so long. And
people were like, that's what's kind of fascinating about it, is because people were coming here long ago. It was an area of intense ritual activity, and then it completely stopped for 4,000 years.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And now it has begun to be an area of focus again. So like the fact, like what I think is really fascinating about that place is there is that break in continuity for an incredibly long time. And then it kind of coming back to, but while it was still a site of kind of mystery and a little bit of like, there was a lot of superstition around it. There was a lot of like, but there was no continuous practice. Nobody was continuing to go there for those 4,000 years.
Yeah.
Like they fully stopped using it.
Yeah, and again, the stories of the people under the hill, like that, this makes so much sense because you see these strange rounded hills that are like that. It looks like there's something underneath it, and there is.
And those passage tomb builders who were in Ireland before the Celts were, and who the Celts had that kind of like reverence but wariness around like these were the people that were displaced, these were the people that were driven away, and these were the people that like their mark on the landscape persists. And like for Celts who didn't build with stone, like if you think about the Celtic peoples and the big difference there, like they didn't build their halls with stone.
Yeah, it was all wood.
Like when the French monks came to build Mellifont Abbey, that was their big thing, was like, you guys don't quarry. You guys build with wood and mud and straw and kind of like a kind of a concrete, but like they didn't build.
Yeah, the wattle
in the same
and
way.
daub
The wattle, exactly. Yeah, all of that kind of stuff, which is kind of like weird to think about now when you're like, oh yeah, there's all of these stone passageways that they had nothing to do with them.
Nothing to do with them. And also the fact, like the sheer almighty like power of moving rocks from the Mourne Mountains, huge boulders over vast distances. Like, doing it today would be a monumental feat, like with a lot of machinery. So how, in the name of whatever is up there, that they did it, it does kind of.
Who knows?
Yeah, it
kind of boggles the mind. But then again, there's sometimes like I remember they worked out how they did it in Egypt.
I think they did.
Yeah, but they did. Wet sand.
Yeah.
If you wet the sand.
Maybe they were just telepathic.
They have.
Hang on, wet sand. Explain wet sand. I wasn't listening.
They
worked again.
They worked out how they moved the blocks to the pyramids in Egypt.
Wet sand.
Wet sand.
How do they? What?
The explanation involves physics.
Oh, no.
And I'm not going to get into it because it would take too long. Not because I don't know how to explain it. But here's the important thing.
Wet sand.
There were...
You shouldn't have started this. You should have just left it as a mystery. It's a big mystery.
There were hieroglyphs
yeah.
of people sprinkling
sand.
Something on the sand. Some liquid on the sand. And when they worked out that there is actually a way of making the block slide if you wet the sand in front of it, it was like, oh, that's a fucking how-to diagram that nobody knew how to decipher for a very long time.
We're definitely not going to compare the lads that were with the Egyptians, because there's a
Aaron's pretending this is more confusing than it is.
I'm just saying, all I was saying
it's not
was
that confusing.
The Egyptians were a far fucking bit ahead technologically and everything else, Lily, than what's going on in Ireland, like civilization wise, art wise,
Newgrange and the pyramids.
Sure.
Not that.
Sure, but there is a theory that like Newgrange is pointing at the.
I think they're both star maps.
Right.
And they're both star maps. If you look at the placement of the pyramids versus the placement of the night sky as it was when they were built.
I was looking at it.
And similar with the Boyne Valley, monuments.
Because there's
the Boyne being the Milky Way, like.
Very good. Because there was a link between Newgrange, Stonehenge, Paris and Egypt. They're all lines linking up, and you're like, okay, but you can draw lines.
That's a ley line. You can draw a line between any two dots, really. It doesn't prove anything.
But I guess, again, kind of going back to like, okay, so...
Except that it's cool and makes you go, ooh, maybe. But
right.
Maybe not, calm down.
True. So anyway, right?
Where I always get to with this stuff, where it's like, yeah, maybe, but also... Come on.
Yeah.
Like we can't make so, which is also why we're not trying to make any definitive. This story means this, and it's definitely exactly what happens, and it links to this thing 100%.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. What we think is they're cool, and also these places are cool.
Stories are cool, places are cool. We're not talking about stories and places.
And we're talking about stories and places because we think they're both cool. And also, I think there's something about, like, I have...
So cool.
Really, there's something...
I have so cool. You are so cool.
There's something about telling the story at the place.
Yeah.
Like, I've told the Giant's Causeway story at the Giant's Causeway.
Nice.
And it's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I've told some of the stories, a couple of different, there's not a huge number of them, but like, we've both had opportunities to go to the place where the thing happened.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And be like, it was fucking here, guys.
Yeah,
it was right here.
And Maca telling the naming of how Maca got the name, of Maca up and like that area.
Up in Navanfort.
Navanfort, thank you. Brilliant, and same with Cruachan out in the Gat, and there it's really strong to be able to, like you say, be near the place, and like I guess. Because we'll be touching on Giant's Causeway as well and telling that story, which is just like, again, it's this miraculous looking thing. It's unexplained, and yet there's a story there to explain it. There's a story there to try to explain it because it's beyond some form of appreciation or comprehension.
And it looks made up.
Yeah.
The Giant's Causeway. It looks like it couldn't possibly be made by nature.
Yeah, it looks...
Which... Contrary to Newgrange, which looks like it couldn't possibly be made by nature and wasn't.
Yeah.
The Giant's Causeway looks like it couldn't possibly be made by nature, but it actually was.
Yeah.
It fully just was.
Just totally was.
It's just volcanoes and oceans and things cracking in patterns that look like they must be deliberate.
Yeah.
But, there is similar rock formations over in Scotland, and so somebody went, wait a minute. If I were a giant... And I had to build a causeway. And I quarried rock in a particular shape. That all lines up.
Yeah. And that one, I guess the causeway one is like...
The causeway one is... It's very in that mythic tradition of like... I think there's not that many stories in Ireland that follow that line of thinking where it's like, here is a natural phenomenon and here is a story to explain it.
Right.
Or here is a natural thing and here is a story to explain it. Whereas in a lot of other, like if you look at Greek myth, you've got like, there's the guy riding his chariot across the sky. That's why the sun goes like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot more.
On the nose. Whereas like, we come back to Newgrange again, like there's theory you could people have postulated whether or not the moon is represented by Ethane in the fact that she changes colour between night and day, and you're like, okay, that's definitely a projection, but it could make sense, could be right.
It's joining dots.
It's joining dots, which we do it all the time, and I love hearing it because it does stimulate a kind of like, oh, that's interesting. It's a nice way of perceiving it and looking at it and seeking out were these astrological kind of phenomenons at the time too big to record in a kind of something mad went up in the air. Which to retain it, you have to make a bigger story about it, like the story of Cuchulainn and his, flaming fire going, or this bulging one eye and tiny back eye, maybe, or the tiny eye that was at the back of his head, and the flame going around his hair. It potentially could be a comet.
The comet
like describing a comet rather than his rage, and then again Lugh when it came back around.
Yeah. There's a whole idea that Lugh and Cuchulainn were comets, and that's where their stories came from.
Yeah.
Because
So
Lugh was a really bright comet, and then when it came back around again, they were like, Lugh's son.
Yeah.
with a fiery head. Whereas Lugh was like shining as bright as the sun, but from the wrong side of the sky, where they were like, it's dawn, but it's not.
This is weird.
But it's weird.
And so we're kind of trying to keep those moments in some form of the oral tradition of passing on information.
Yeah,
but also
there's a kind of an encoded metaphor in the stories as well of like astrological and astronomical phenomena. I knew you were going to do that.
I didn't.
Yes,
it did. Only negative part of being in the shafts again is Sorcha can slap me again.
I didn't slap you except twice.
Except twice. And you were in the middle of something, so I didn't bring it up at the time.
I didn't slap you except twice.
Snap it. Anyway, so we're going to be telling the kind of creation story of
and
where
not hard.
Yeah, but I'm just still violence, sorry. And we don't agree with violence. Any form of slapping. No slapping around here. Not that I'd mention anything topical like that to do with anything specifically about being slapped.
we don't condone violence. It's just occasionally necessary when people are fucking talking over you.
I for one am appalled. I'm shocked and appalled, and I am going to stand up against.
You should look into non-violent communication.
Clearly, you should. I'm not the one who needs to look into it. So we're going to be looking at the Boan as well, and the kind of the river goddess, the Boyne, being like so heavily linked to Newgrange. But there's some really, really interesting stories about the Angus Og living or getting Brún na Boine and be giving him or tricking.
We're going to have a Boan era Newgrange, and we're going to have an Angus era of Newgrange, because there's kind of two different ways we could look at it, because different people have occupied the place at different times, but it is called Brún na Boine. It's Boan's
gaff.
It's Boan's gaff, and then Angus gets it because some stuff happens, and you'll find out.
Yeah, very soon. And he's only gorgeous.
And then after that, we have some ideas. We're not going to get into them now, but we have some ideas.
We do.
And we also would like, as Aron said at the top of the podcast, to hear from people if you guys have places that you find intriguing, or you're thinking, there's a bit of a story about this place, but I don't know the full story. Mm-hmm. Or I have heard the bones of a story about this place and I don't really know any more about it. Let us know. Reach out, get in touch, write a comment, send an email.
You can get in touch by going onto our website, www.candlelittales.ie, and fill out the contact us form, or going onto Instagram, Facebook, Tweedledum or Tweedledee.
We never check Twitter.
I do every now and again.
Oh, do you?
Every now and again.
Jesus, fair play. I didn't know you checked Twitter. I thought it was just kind of sitting there.
It does.
I thought it was sitting there fallow like my Instagram account, which is just exists.
You have two Instagram accounts.
To be tagged in.
You set up two Instagram accounts.
And I put one photo on one, and I put two photos on the other.
Yeah.
And I don't check either.
It's so confusing.
One.
Delete one of them, for the love of God.
I don't know. I that would require me to log on to Instagram, which I won't.
Fair enough.
I'm confused. The one that is the valid one is the one that has the one photo of the tiny pumpkin.
You know what I find funny is when people reach out and go, "Hey guys, I'm not sure who I'm talking to here, but blah 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 blah." If you contact us on Instagram, you're talking to me.
You're talking to Aron. You're
100%.
always talking to Aron.
You're pretty much always talking to me. That's true, unless we literally make you talk to us. Make.
Well, no. So you sometimes tell me what the message is, and then ask me how to respond.
Yeah.
And then I say
I
don't know.
So, if you want to ask us more questions, ask me.
Send it to us, and send us your suggestions, and send us your ideas, and send us your stuff, and we will take it and look at it. And if there's there's probably some cool stories out there.
I imagine there are. We've kind of like the second part of this series written up kind of as a loose structure, but we want to kind of wait to hear back to see if there's any other ideas out there that we want to get on to.
Or do some of the next series so that we don't keep falling behind in our podcast.
Yeah, we're doing that a lot. At the moment, we're very busy creating Crew, which is the old Irish word for creation. And it's a beautiful game-based storytelling show that we're going to be bringing to schools in Dublin all over May. Mm-hmm. And we're really looking forward to that, and that's why.
But it also means our dance card is real full for May, so we're trying to actually get ahead of ourselves for once in our lives,
which we'll do our best with. So
we will.
Yeah, Gordon Mila Magut, and thank you for listening. If you are a Patreon supporter, thank you so much for supporting this podcast.
If you're not a Patreon supporter, you can become a Patreon supporter by going to patreon.com/candlelittales.
Oh, you nearly tripped up there.
I nearly, but I didn't.
You had a bit of a stutter.
A bit. But
all right.
You can like, and you can comment, and you can subscribe. Subscribe.
So say it again.
Subscribe. Subscribe.
One more time. Oh, okay.
I'm doing it French now. Subscribe.
Sorcha and Aron have not had enough sleep, apparently.
Sorcha and Aron have not had enough sleep, man.
Yeah, we're cultivating a good insomnia.
And then we had too much caffeine, and so now we're a little bit wired.
Yeah.
And Aron keeps needing a slap.
I disagree on the final point. I don't need for a slap. It's not on my list of things that I want nor need.
Yeah, you might not want it.
Stay in touch, guys. We'll talk to you next time. Apologies for the very giddy pre-show chats.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
See you next time. You.